Throughout the decades, women's role in film has morphed in relation to the change of how they were viewed in society. In the 40s, there were few significant roles for women. Before World War II, they were expected to be housewives, and after their brief stint of freedom during the war, they had to return to that position. When they were in films, they were often the damsel in distress with only a few moments when they broke away from this stereotype. The release of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1938 reflects what expectations society had for women at the time. This is clearly highlighted by her dreaming of a prince to carry her away and support her. It is also demonstrated in how she required a prince to save her instead of pulling herself up by her bootstraps. She is ultimately saved by a true love's kiss, in which afterwards she gets to escape all her problems by marrying the prince. A true damsel in distress. In this time period, some characters did defy expectations, but they often perpetuated other stereotypes. In Gone with the Wind, released in 1940, Scarlett O'Hara, the main character, is a headstrong young woman in the Civil War era. She is willing to fight for what she wants, contrasting the idea of a well-behaved, agreeable Southern belle. Such contrast broke the damsel in distress mold, yet Scarlett is constantly tangled up in her love life. The plot, in fact, revolves around her affairs, and at the end, all of her loves leave her. For all her adventures and characters, Scarlett is still in a story where the driving plot point is her quest to get some guy to love her. Throughout the 1950s, women continued to have supporting roles in popular movies. Such roles varied from being a loving wife to a femme fatale. The common thread, however, was that there were very few female leads, and even fewer who went beyond stereotypes. When the women's liberation movement happened in the 60s, this started to change. Female leads started to be fleshed out and more realistic. There are still few of them, but those that were there, they were more like real women. Take, for example, Breakfast at Tiffany's, a movie released in 1961. The main character, Holly Golightly, is a young New York socialite whose main goal was to marry rich. Pretty standard ambition. However, she works as an escort and lives in her own apartment. She's sophisticated enough to navigate the New York social life, all of this contrasting the previous decade's idea of a mild-mannered housewife. Her goal is slightly stereotypical, but her character is not. The movie was released before the women's liberation movement later in the decade, but it was still a good indicator of how things were going to change. After the 60s, 1975 was declared International Women Year by the UN. Roe v. Wade had happened 2 years prior, and women were now fighting for equal rights in the form of the ERA, or the Equal Rights Amendment. Yet the silver screen still hadn't gotten the memo of equality, with most blockbusters lacking positive female representation. TV had a better time at this. The 70s Wonder Woman show, released in 1975, occurred after a decade of women's rights. In this show, Wonder Woman is a capable hero who is equal to her male counterparts. She is smart, strong, and excels at her missions to defeat the blubbering Nazis. The show's whole message is very feminist, and it provided hope that the movies could pick up on this kind of representation. The 70s is also the start of the Star Wars franchise, the home of Princess Leia. Leia will turn out to be an influential character in the changing roles of women in film. But in A New Hope, released in 1977, she starts as the damsel in distress. However, it is clear once Luke and co rescue her, she isn't just a damsel. With her strong will and craftiness, she breaks out of many molds, working as a leader in the rebellion, not just a side character. She digs into the dirt and seems to usher in an era of better representation. But there was still a problem. Leia was well written, but it was pretty much only her in the original trilogy. Although certain women in film started to become more complex and real, there were simply too few of such women. The 80s, 90s, and 2000s had the same problem, and it was only until the 2010s that this problem started to desist. This is because the world acknowledges women differently, and screenwriters now take special pains to write beyond the stereotype as well as to be more inclusive. Take Hidden Figures, for example, released in 2016. The leads are all female and they're hard-working women who dance, swear, and live their lives as best as they can. Not only that, they work at NASA amongst other women, so they're not the only ones in the movie. The story brings these characters to life, and this isn't a rare occurrence anymore. Recently, movies have had more fleshed-out female leads and characters. Going back to the Star Wars franchise, The Last Jedi, released in 2017, has a female protagonist in Rey. She's accompanied by General Leia, Rose, and Vice Admiral Holdo, all respectable women who don't follow stereotypes and are their own characters. Their character might be terribly written, but the idea of trying to have many complex characters is there. Leia is no longer alone in this franchise. Finally, TV shows have also shown development, with the 11th season of Doctor Who. The Doctor can be regenerated into any body, and it's in 2018 that there's the first female Doctor Who. She is zany, playful, and daring, reflective of the real world. This shift goes to show how women's role in film has evolved. They went from mostly playing supporting characters who had only moments of realism to occasionally being lead characters who were not stereotypes. But in this time and age, women are starting to consistently play complex and varied characters. It's taken a long time, but we're here now.